National analysis of class exploitation, economic development and violent revolt. I'm your host Sarah, and I'm joined with Aoife, Fiona and Saoirse, and today we embark on a journey through revolutionary ideas of Karl Marx, exploring their relevance in today's global context. Marx's theories on class exploitation, economic development and the potential for violent revolt have left an indelible mark on the understandings of social change. Whether you're a seasoned scholar of Marx or just at the beginning, to explore the complexities of social theory, this podcast aims to provide insightful analysis and foster a nuanced understanding of the relationship between class dynamics, economic systems, and the potential for a transformative social upheaval. I will now pass you over to Aoife, who will be summarising the article on Marx's theory of rebellion.
This article argues that Marx's theory of rebellion can explain the puzzling finding that economic development can lead to rebellion, even after controlling for income, quality, and political democracy. The authors show that economic development fosters revolt because of its impacts on proletarianization and class exploitation. They develop a novel measure of class exploitation and use it in a cross-national regression analysis of violent rebellion in 61 countries. The results are consistent with Marx's expectations that market crisis conditioned the effect of class exploitation on revolt. Conclude that their findings provide new empirical support for Marx's theory of rebellion. This theory has been criticised for failing to predict the failure of proletarian revolutions to occur in the most developed countries. However, the authors' findings suggest that Marx's theory can still be used to explain why rebellion can occur, even in developed countries. They argue that economic development can lead to rebellion because of its impact on proletarianization and class exploitation. They also find that market crisis condition the effect of class exploitation on revolt. This means that when the market conditions are bad, the likelihood of rebellion increases. This is because market crisis tends to lead to an increased unemployment, poverty, and inequality. These conditions can create a sense of desperation and hopelessness among workers, which can make them more likely to rebel. The author's conclusion also has implications for policymakers. It suggests that economic development policies should be carefully designed to avoid exacerbating class exploitation and market crisis. This could help to reduce the risk of rebellion and social unrest.
Saoirse, what do you think are the classical concepts drawn from Marx by the authors?
Well, Sarah, in this article, the author William J. Dixon draws on many of Marx's theories, including his theory on rebellion, investigation of the integration dependency theory, a cross-national analysis of class exploitation, violent revolt, and economic development. Dixon focuses primarily on Marx's theory of rebellion, which is tied to Marx's analysis of class conflict. Marx's theory on rebellion describes how societies are segregated based on different classes, which causes an internal conflict within each society. In particular, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat class. Marx suggested that over time this conflict will heighten due to exploitation of the proletariat, which is the working class, by the bourgeoisie, the owners of wealth and means of production. Marx's theory also suggested that over time the proletariat class would eventually rebel against the exploitation and alienation conditions that they are faced with by the bourgeoisie class. This theory is extensively discussed in the article, where Dixon delves into how Marx's political writings on exploitation are the fundamental source of the class conflict theory. Marx's theory of class conflict forms the core elements for his theory of rebellion. Marx describes how class conflict is the main cause for rebellion throughout society. He portrayed that the proletariats would unite against the bourgeoisies due to the injustice and exploitation they were faced with. In this article, Dixon illustrates how both of these theories tie into Marx's other theory of class exploitation. Marx's theory of class exploitation is established by the idea of how within capitalist societies, one of the classes exploits the other class, specifically the bourgeoisie class, as they own the means of production. Therefore, they can control the labour of the proletariat class. Marx argued the bourgeoisie class uses this to their advantage to gain a surplus from the proletariat class, which leads to exploitation and conflict within a society, furthermore causing rebellion.
Saoirse, how do you think authors use the ideas and concepts from the classical theorists?
Well, Sarah, I think the author Dixon uses many of Karl Marx's theories to dissect and analyse class conflict, class exploitation and rebellion. In the initial section of Dixon's article, he stated that Marx committed a fundamental error in his social theory by predicting proletarian revolts would occur in the most developed countries, which was quite often not the case. Marx's theory failed to evaluate how economic development increases rebellion, also as he primarily focused on exploitation, although it is fundamental to rebellion in Marx's theory. Dixon proceeds to highlight Marx's failure to distinctly define exploitation in a way that separates it analytically from development, hindering empirical inquiry. Since Marx's predictions were dismissed long ago, many researchers assumed that additional analysis was unnecessary. Dixon describes how some of Marx's theories should be re-examined in order to help better understand class exploitation. Dixon follows on to evaluate Marx's theory of revolt, stating that the theory does not explain when rebellion will result in revolution. He assessed how Marx's theoretical model diverges from that of other theorists such as Hobsbawm, Friesland, Goldstone, Jesse, and various secondary sources. These studies primarily capture the core of Marx's theory. In summary, Dixon dissects many of Marx's theories by critically analysing various aspects. Overall, Dixon provides a subtle assessment of Marx's theories and describes their relevance in understanding the different dynamics of society.
Well, Fiona, how well do you think the author's use of classical theory in their analysis?
Thanks, Sarah. I personally think in this article that the author's use of classical theory in their analysis, to a certain extent, they draw heavily on Karl Marx's ideas and the concepts to understand rebellion and the role of class struggles in society. One of the strengths of the author's analysis is their ability to effectively incorporate classical Marxian theories in their examinations of rebellion. They accurately summarise and apply Marx's ideas such as the notions of exploitation and the class struggle to explain the dynamics and the motivations behind different forms of rebellion. Their incorporate of Marx's concepts provides a strong foundation for their argument and highlights the ongoing relevance of Marx's theory. However, in their analysis, I feel that they could be further enriched by engaging with alternative perspective and theories, as well as considering a broader range of factors that contribute to rebellion. Overall, while the author's analysis is successful in some aspects, it also has its limitations.
So you thought the article had limitations. What would you have added to that article?
So firstly, I would have extended the analysis on global capitalism. Using the current ideas from globalization, I would use an analysis on how global capitalization affects class relation. I'd examine in greater detail how international situationships support or oppose unfair economic arrangements. Much on how multifunctional firms and international policies contribute to the exploitation of labour and resources in other countries. So in addition to that, I would have conducted a more thorough investigation into the integration dependency theory. This theory emphasises the uneven relationship between the rich and the developing countries, with contrasts to Marx's concentration on exploitation. I would look into ways in which the economic reliance on some countries on other fuels, class differences, and the possibility of violent. In addition, I would have conducted a more thorough investigation on the integration dependency theory. This theory emphasises the uneven relationship between the rich and the developing countries, which contrast with Marx's concentration on exploitation. I would look into ways in which the economic reliance of some countries on others' fuels, class differences, and the possibility of violent revolt. Think back to the past events and unrest resulted economic exploitation by outstanding powers. And then lastly, I would explore the intersectionality of rebellion. I'd consider to explain how class interact with other social categories and shape rebellious movements. I would investigate in the ways in which class dynamics, gender, race, and ethnicity interact during violent uprising. I'd examine various social groups that may perceive to react in exploitation in different ways, resulting in a range of resistant strategies. So, Sarah, do you think that the author built on any of the theorists' work?
On reading this journal article, I could clearly see evidence of the author building on the theorist's work. I was intrigued to see the author build on the work of Engels and Marx's 1848 publication, drawing from the fundamental concepts within the development of capitalism throughout the article. The author paid particular attention throughout the article to the proletariat, class structure and class exploitation. Examination of structuring and classification of the proletariat was evident throughout the article as it was compared to the effects of the growing capitalist development. The author then transitions into discussions of class exploitation. Although it wasn't brought up a lot in Marx's writing, the exploitation element was critical within Marx's theory. The author refers to exploitation as a conflicting element within economic development, using Marx's knowledge to devise between the two. Within this section of the article, the author develops on Marx's anticipation and hopes of the proletarian revolution, which turned out to be a failure. To summarise, the author consistently builds on Marx and Engels' ideologies, comparing ideas to reality and the contemporary views on revolution. And lastly, the journal article has most definitely changed my views on Karl Marx, in particular how Marx portrayed the proletariat and how the author developed Marx's view of the proletariat. I believe in some undeveloped societies and third world economies, there are definitely people who relate to the proletariat and historical materialism. Many people won't have any means of production, they are often just used for their labour and exploited within the capitalist society. They are, just like the proletariat, another cog in the system and don't have any particular means of wealth and are viewed as a lower class citizen. By understanding the proletariat in the modern world, I can definitely understand Karl Marx's theories a lot more clearly and precisely. I'd just like to thank my guests Fiona, Aoife and Saoirse. I really appreciate you coming on here with your knowledge and for voicing your opinions. I really do hope after listening to this podcast that you've learned something from Marx's theory of rebellion as much as we did. I've been your host, Sarah Flaherty. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day.